So, rule number 5, each participant must define himself. Conversely, the one interpreted must be able to recognize herself in the interpretation. Why should this rule be easy?
Because we should understand who we are, our strengths and our shortcomings.
Yeah. You should know who you are in some way, shape, or form. You have labels that you identify yourself as. We did actually get through this one.
Yeah.
All right.
We're on 7.
We're on 7. Okay, I apologize. I was like, my other class, my afternoon class is only on rule 4. That's what it is. Small mistake. All right. Dialogue can only take place between equals. Why is this rule difficult?
I read that it had to be like, there needs to be authentic interreligious dialogue. Like it has to be authentic. And that part in itself can be difficult.
Good, sir.
When you know something and the person that you're talking with doesn't, it's really easy to place yourself higher than them and then say that you believe that you're educating them and that kind of thing.
Good.
I was just gonna say that like it may be hard because like if you do not share the same like ideologies and like you're conversating with them, like you said, like you may think your ideology is superior and like you just it's hard to have like an agreement on one singular thing when like two people have different views on the subject.
So we want to believe that what we think is correct, that we are perfect, and in a sense we are, but we want to think that we know what we're talking about, which means that we're often going to see somebody else as not knowing, which means we see them as less than who we are. You also have the challenge that comes up where maybe you have years of experience with something, and especially if you've made assumptions about another person, then you might think that they don't know, and thus they're uninformed and have nothing to offer. So this rule can be very difficult. How does it become easy?
When you humble yourself.
Okay, when you humble yourself.
It becomes easy when you try to understand what the other person's needs are, so like you come to an agreement with it.
Good. So when there's empathy and when there's understanding of the other person. What about when we acknowledge that really this other person is just like us? They eat, go to sleep, wake up, go to work. They're asking the same types of questions we're asking, and they just have similar or different answers to us. They're just human. Yeah. As I mentioned in the SLS class I had, you think of the most famous person, guess what? They're still human. They still go through challenges, and they still have the same amount of time that you have every single day. The other component that makes this easy is when you realize that sometimes you can learn so much from somebody who you might not have thought of as an equal. The Dalai Lama has mentioned where at times it is in the question of a child that he found understanding of a Buddhist principle. Mark Hansen, Christianity, has said similar notions. We see these ideas coming up throughout religions where when we see or when we're willing to see another person as valid, as valuable, then we can see them as an equal. And an equal doesn't mean in this sense 100% exactly the same. It means different but no better and no worse. Why do you think it's important to have this notion of being on the same level, being equal in some manner when studying religion?
So it helps you understand.
Helps you to be open to understanding other religions.
If you think that like whatever you believe is better, then you're not gonna be like open to hearing other things and you won't really learn about them. You'll just be focused on the one thing.
This course is not designed to change a person's religion, but at the same time, if you feel that your religion and the way you understand it is 100% the way it is with no ifs, ands, or buts about it, you're not going to learn. In fact, you're probably going to be sitting and judging everything every day. And that, as we mentioned with the previous rules, with defining yourself, with assumptions, that judgment is not an enjoyable way to be in general. So when you see these other things as different than what you do, what you believe, but still humans trying to understand the nature of reality, it makes it a little bit easier. All right, rule number 8. Dialogue can take place only on the basis of mutual trust. Why is this one difficult?
Because it could be difficult sometimes to just trust people. It depends on how you were brought up, how you were taught. I don't know how to explain it. Your upbringing is the best way to put it.
Do you think the rule about assumptions can really make this rule difficult also? Meaning if you're assuming things about others, then that means you're more likely to distrust them. That example, you're on an island and all the news you ever hear is that Christianity is the Westboro Baptist Church, is people burning sacred texts, is somebody predicting the end of the world. And then a Christian moves in next to you. Is it going to be easy to trust that person initially? Not if you have your assumptions. But when you let go of your assumptions, that's the doorway to trusting. What else, or how else is this rule easy?
The foundation of ethical listening to people in regards to when people are speaking to you is always trust that they're being genuine.
Yeah.
Even if, take that leap to trust them, even if it's illogical to trust everyone all the time.
The only way you can trust is, the only way you can find out if there's trust is to trust. Rule 9. So rule 9 and 10 are my favorite rules. Persons entering into interreligious, inter-ideological dialogue must be at least minimally self-critical of both themselves and their own religious or ideological traditions. What makes this rule difficult? Why is it hard?
Because it's hard to doubt yourself.
Yeah. It's really hard to doubt yourself. We have this thing called ego, and we have this thing called pride, and we have this thing called not wanting to be vulnerable. We want to believe that we know what we need to know. We want to believe that everything we know is the way it is. The idea that something we believe could be wrong, or at least not completely correct, that means that stability in this world, stability in our worldview can start to collapse. So how does this rule become easy? Why is this rule easy?
Finding flaws in your own religion and understanding that your religion or belief might have doubts and dark areas.
Good. Well,
Because by doubting your own beliefs or what you think is correct, you're essentially strengthening your foundation of your own religion.
Good. Does doubting mean we stop believing? No. It means we're curious. It means we're open to learning. It means we're willing to see something from a different perspective, which means we're willing to embrace opportunities that might exist. We're willing to actually go through that process of understanding somebody else. Because we're willing to understand what we believe, why we believe it, how we came to believe it. And yes, going back to rule number 1, being willing to learn that we might change our perspectives. Doesn't mean we have to lose them. Rowan Williamson, in a quote that we watch in the video at the end of the term, he says, "I am a passionate doubter." Every day he's a passionate doubter. He seeks God because he has questions about this world. People don't purport to know everything. Rather, they seek to understand it. They seek to learn because they know they don't know everything. And they also know that their own tradition has changed over time and geography and language. And with every one of those changes means room for interpretation, room for misinterpretation, room for misapplication as well. So then my favorite rule, Rule 10. Each participant eventually must attempt to experience the partner's religion or ideology from within. Why is this difficult?
Because you may not agree with somebody else's beliefs or ideology.
Difficult because you're not a follower of this other person's religion or ideology. So the idea of trying to truly, understand from within, that's a challenge. That's difficult. What else makes it difficult?
Because don't some religions actually frown upon looking at other religions?
There are groups that will say, don't go and learn about other religions. Don't go and experience this other thing because you may be tempted.
So you might find like flaws in your own religion.
Yeah. Or you might find something that you enjoy and like and that could enrich your own life. One of the videos we'll watch in this course is by Houston Smith. And we'll see how he was, at the same time, he was an associate minister in the Methodist Church and president of the local Vedanta society where he lived. Christianity and Hinduism. He was able to say it's okay to have both. But most religions, most people will say, how do you do that? If you go and listen to this other thing, you might be tempted. Is that out of fear, do you think? Or is it out of control, possibly?
I think it's the latter. Because it's the foundation of religion. Well, certain religions. Isn't the idea that is in order to attract followers for the sake of rejuvenation or saving or
It can be, yeah.
peace? And so attracting followers is the goal and keeping them there. Is that not the case?
It can absolutely be the case, and it can be a reason why it's frowned upon to go visit something else, because you want your answer to be the only answer. A group wants its teachings to be the only teachings. How does this rule become easy? Why does this rule become easy? When does this rule become easy?
It becomes easy when you have all the resources around you to be able to go and do the research.
It can be easy if you even if you're like experiencing or like learning about other religions, if you know
like, and you believe that something is true, then it wouldn't affect it if you're like grounded in it. I guess I don't know how to explain it.
One way it's been explained is if you have beliefs about something, beliefs change. But if you have faith about something, faith is very deep. Roots of a tree. Even when the tree shakes, the roots remain. And so sometimes it can be understood as because I experienced something else doesn't mean that it's going to change what I believe. I've given the example before. Let's say you have two students who end up being college dorm mates. And one of them loves country line dancing and country music. And the other one loves reggae music. And initially, when these two students meet, they have so many assumptions about the other person. Oh, you like country music? Are you like, and then the other person's like, well, wait a minute, you're into reggae. You must be. And then they realize over the course of the fall semester, they're going off into the same major. They like some of the same foods. They hate some of the same instructors. Well, spring semester comes along. There's a country line dancing event, and there's a reggae concert. They've grown to mutually trust each other. They've seen that the other person is a human being just like they are, so there's that level of equality. They're willing now to learn from one another's experiences. So the person who loves country music goes to the reggae festival. By going there, does that mean they have to completely participate? Or can they watch? They can watch. But if they choose to, they're welcome to participate. By doing either of those things, does it mean they're going to stop loving country music? No. Does it mean they're all of a sudden going to completely fall in love with reggae music? Maybe. But what it probably means is they're going to have an appreciation now. They're going to be able to understand more, empathize more with their roommate. And in reverse, same thing. The person who loves reggae music goes to the country line dancing event. All of a sudden, does that mean they stop liking reggae music? No. Does it mean they understand their roommate a bit more? Yes. Is it possible that either one of them, after going to the other, might bring back a different type of dance or movement that could be incorporated into what they're doing? Sure. Going to a museum is great. Speaking to followers of different religions is great. Going and experiencing Thai Temple on Palm River Road. Going to get a free meal Friday night at Hillel, the Jewish Center at USF, for their Shabbat dinner. Going to the mosque on Sly Avenue. Going to these places. Going to the powwow this weekend in Sarasota. Going to them doesn't mean you lose who you've been. It means you're willing to see something from another person's eyes. That phrase, you don't speak badly until you've walked a mile in another person's moccasins, or shoes, or sandals, or flip-flops, or high heels, or whatever type of shoe this person wears. In one sense, we can never completely live the life of another person. We are each unique with all of the events and experiences we've had. But when we seek to understand, when we seek to try and truly put ourselves in the shoes of another, that's when we can find the similarities and find out what unites us. Because if we don't know what unites us, then yes, our diversity tears us apart. But if we have a sense of what unites us, our diversity, all these little differences, only enrich our lives and help us understand just how amazing existence is. One little tangent here. My first year in college up at UCF in Orlando, took a philosophy course. I thought I'd do great in it. I loved philosophy. I'd been reading different philosophers for years, high school, etc. And I came out with, well, I didn't pass the class. So I had to take the class a second time. Took it with same instructor, same day, same classroom. And after the first paper, I was really happy because I now knew how to write. The first semester I'd taken the class, I hadn't yet taken Comp 1. So there was some decent improvements in my ability to cite things. But I still only made a B minus on that paper. And so I sat down with the instructor and I asked, what's wrong here? I gave proper citations, you approved the, I thought it was a pretty good paper. And she's like, yeah, it's a great paper, but you weren't being a philosopher. I'm 19 years old. I'm not a philosopher. What do you mean? And she said, well, if you're going to pass this class, if you're going to pass any class, you need to be able to connect with the material. And in my class, I want you to be the philosopher. Okay, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you're studying these pre-Socratics. And there's a group, and they believe that water is the source of everything. Tell me why they believe that. Well, the book didn't really explain the why. It just stated what they believed. So I was like sitting there, I'm like, well, what do you mean? They saw water everywhere. What do you mean? She goes, no, now think about it. They don't have modern technology yet. They don't understand how all the systems of the earth work. Why would they think that water is an ultimate power? It's like, okay, well, it comes in multiple forms. It's liquid and it's solid when it's frozen. It's hot. It can turn into steam. She's like, okay, what happens if there's too much water? Well, too much water, people can drown or there's flooding. She goes, what if there's not enough water? Well, people can die and there's drought and the plants die. She goes, that seems pretty powerful, doesn't it? I was like, okay, yes, I understand. She's like, now you're putting yourself as much as you can into the lives, into the situation that these people existed in. So now you're being the philosopher because now you're beginning to seek understanding, seek another perspective. She said, whenever you take a class, history, anything, find a character, find a person, find something that you can read and just immerse yourself into. Because then you'll actually begin to understand the material. And you'll understand it in a way that will enlighten you, will allow you to actually, truly learn and change in your perceptions. So I ended up with an A that semester. And I used her technique though, and it helped me do well in every course. And so when I learned about the Dialogue Decalogue and Rule 10, I was like, oh, there it is. Be in this other place. Experience it as much as you can from within. We can't all go to all the different experiences, and I understand, like, for instance, the powwow's way far away. But if you get a chance to talk to somebody, to go with a friend to any type of event, do it. It won't hurt. It's not going to change your religion unless you weren't really rooted in your religion to start. And it's okay if that happens, by the way. That's not a bad thing. But if you're rooted in your religion, all it's going to do is help you understand and appreciate. All right, I'll get off my little soapbox there.
You should have told us that in SLS.
Right?
That would have been an awesome thing.
All right. Well, I'm very passionate about religious studies, and I'm passionate about people experiencing different things because we are, okay, I'm just going to do that. All right, otherwise I'm going to keep talking. We want to go through some of these definitions of religion. So, taking a step back or two, I want to go through some of these definitions and ask you what your response is to them. Because we heard where people were asking other people about what religion meant, and some said it was a system of control, or it is the cause of violence, and others it's comfort and peace. So, go to paper. There we go. Religion is a dream in which our own conceptions and emotions appear to us as separate existences, being outside of ourselves. One question that gets asked is, how did religion come to exist? Why do you think we have religion?
People like to believe in something. They like to have questions answered and stuff.
We want to believe in something. We want to understand something. We want to have stability. And we want to understand that what we see in our dreaming state and what we see in, quote, real life somehow is connected. And so with this definition, we have this notion that it's being able to say that what we personally think and experience and dream and conceptualize is legitimate. And it's what we then put outward. I think we have one or two people who might be going into sociology. In sociology, you'll learn Paul Tillich, who some of his quotes are in this list as well. And it's this aspect of socialization. We experience thoughts and ideas that we got when we were kids. And then we express those outward, which then impacts the community we're part of, which then in turn impacts how that community raises their children, who then take what they learn and put it back out. It's this ongoing cycle. And so when we look back, it was people seeking to answer questions. It was people seeking to explain what they saw, what they felt. Emile Durkheim, a unified system of beliefs and practice relative to sacred things. That is to say, things set apart and forbidden. Beliefs and practices which unite into one single community, called a church, for example, all those who adhere to them. Or, religion is only the sentiment inspired by the group in its members, but projected outside of the consciousness that experiences them. So the second definition is similar to the first one we mentioned here about. What about this first one? Sacred things. What does the word sacred mean?
Special.
Holds certain value.
Special, it's important, it holds value. What does sacred time feel like? If there's a time period that you have set aside as being sacred, what does it feel like? Can you describe it?
It's peaceful.
Peaceful. Does time pass differently when you're in sacred time?
Yes.
Awareness changes. It either shifts to something deep within you or possibly something deep or further up above and beyond you. What about sacred places? How does the sacred place feel? Reverent?
Feels alive.
Alive?
As a part of you when you're there.
You feel like you are part of it and it's part of you. Connected. Can you tell a sacred place from a non-sacred place, even if the place isn't necessarily sacred to you? When you go into a church, a synagogue, a temple, when you go to the Grand Canyon, when you go and you're looking out on the Gulf, does the place feel different than the classroom, the workplace?
Yes.
What about sacred object? How does a sacred object impact you? What's an example of a sacred object?
Maybe a relic.
A relic?
It feels heavier.
Okay. There's a weight, there's a density to it. Okay. What are examples of sacred objects?
The cross.
Cross. What about a wedding ring? Yeah, wedding rings are sacred. Our clothing can be seen as sacred. We only wear it on special occasions. William James, the fact that they are so many and so different from one another is enough to prove that the word religion cannot stand for any single principle or essence, but is rather a collective name. Often when people think religion, they think Western religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. Eastern religions, oh, well, their ways of life, their cultures, their spiritualities, their philosophies, they're also religions. There are so many different types and kinds of religion that we can't say that religion is any one particular thing. But William James also tells us that religion is the feelings, acts, and experiences of individual men in their solitude, so far as they apprehend themselves to stand in relationship to whatever they consider divine. So whatever is considered divine, whatever is considered sacred, religion is how you feel towards that, how you are acting in relationship to it. So we mentioned feeling things that are sacred. Do we act differently when we're in either sacred time or dealing with a sacred place or a sacred object? Yeah. We pay attention, for one thing. We honor it. I heard the word reverence. Were there any definitions that stood out to you before I go to the next very different style of definition? All right, very different style of definition. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, a protest against real suffering. It is the opium of the people, the illusionary sun. That's a really different type of definition, isn't it, compared to the others? It's looking almost at religion. Hello. That's going to be a nice loud sound.